Hi, folks. Welcome to another episode of Film Study. This is Ken McCusick, and it's time for this week's matchups episode with co-host Frazier Tafar. Frazier, how you doing?
Doing good, Ken. Coming off an instant classic against LA this Sunday and seeing how they follow that up against the Sunday night match with the Jaguars.
One of the really great games, that's for sure. Now, the Ravens' previous win over San Diego does not look that good today after San Diego got beat 63-14 by the Raiders. 63-14, 63-21.
63-21.
Sure yeah, 63-21. It's a pretty ugly one-sided win either way. But Brandon Staley and Telesco, also their GM, also got fired today. Not surprising. Just happened about 10 minutes ago before we were recording. Would you want any part of Brandon Staley as a positional coach or a coordinator if the Ravens had a position available?
I think his background is DB, isn't it?
Yeah, he's on the defensive side of the ball. He's been the coordinator for in other cases. He's the defensive play caller right now for the Chargers. So, presumably he would stay in that kind of a mold. I think he's demonstrated very clearly some lack of important head coaching characteristics in terms of blowing up at the podium. Yeah,
I think if you're trying to ask me, is he a good replacement for Mike McDonald? No, I don't think that could work out. Maybe you don't see a lot of head coaches kind of take a couple steps back and be an assistant coach. Even as a DB assistant coach, that would probably be more of his suit, trying to, work his way back up to head coach. That would be helpful. But on the Ravens, I don't think there's a space for Stanley.
All right. Well, fair enough. Staley is out here. I don't think there's a place either. I think just in terms of how he reacts to things, it's just not very positive. Obviously, taking him out of that pressure situation probably makes him a little better, but I don't see any compelling reason, honestly, to hire him. And the things that he really did well as a game manager, as a head coach, was being very much on the cutting edge of analytics in terms of pushing the football math to a great degree. I think you can replicate that without having to that be the feature you're hiring a head coach for. So I hope that the Chargers look at this and say, the guy we really want is Anthony Weaver, but that's our own selfish reasons in doing that.
Yeah, that would definitely help us up with the compensatory pick. But I think the Chargers have an opportunity to really change their whole franchise. I think they've had this stigma around them that they're very average, can't get over the hump. I think they have an opportunity to really rebuild, though.
We'll see how they do that, and if it involves a Ravens coach in any way. Either way, it was a coaching vacancy that was going to be open at year end. Yep. It's just open a little early. So in this case, the Ravens may be asked to interview McDonald early by the Chargers. In which case, honestly, I think they ought to refuse until the end of the year. And then when Black Monday comes and a whole bunch of coaches are gone the day after the season, then they could let him interview at that point, I suppose, with a bye week before the playoffs.
Yep.
But focus is going to have to be at a high level for this coaching staff and this team going into the postseason.
Yeah, and I don't want to say that was a factor in the 2019 loss, but let's be realistic. I think if you have opportunity to coach somewhere else, I think it does creep into your mind while you're getting ready for the task at hand.
Right. All right. Well, anyway, let's look ahead to the Jags to Sunday night. We have some an interesting situation because the Jags now have kind of reduced their hold on the AFC South, which seemed like an absolute lock 2 weeks ago, to a very tenuous grip with both the Colts and Texans just one game behind that. They're both 7-6. The Jags are 8-5, and the Jags are fortunate that the Texans have significant injury issues that include CJ Stroud. I don't know where he's in position to play this week or not.
He's not.
He's not going to play. Was he out all week?
Yeah, their head coach said it's looking like it's getting better, but he hasn't cleared protocol, so I doubt it.
That's why it was so important for the Ravens to have this late bye week to get Madubuike back on the field. It probably would not have happened because clearing in 1 week is now something that it's actually probably a little bit less likely to happen than not. So you don't want to be without a key player. And obviously the Colts have their own set of issues with injuries, and including they're using a backup quarterback pretty much for the whole season in Gardner Minshew. But it's a group that either one of those teams, if they play well down the stretch, has a chance to outlast the Jaguars, who look like they could really be unraveling right now.
It's kind of sad because you always see as Trevor Lawrence as one of these best quarterbacks in the league, and it really hasn't panned out for him. And I personally like Doug Peterson. He's a good coach, good play caller. It's Ravens centric. It's great to see them kind of go through this debacle at the end of the season, but overall, as an NFL fan, it's kind of tough to see an organization like that kind of go down. I think when they lost Christian Kirk, I think that was a crucial part to their offense going downhill.
Yeah, they don't have a really top set of receivers anymore, that's for sure. And he was, like Mark Andrews, was really the receiver that Lawrence liked to look for above all else, and their big-time slot receiver. I'll let you kick it off here. Which side of the ball would you like to talk about first?
Let's go offensively this week. My matchup is going to be our tackles versus Trayvon Walker and Josh Allen. Last week, we saw the Ravens feature a rotation and at both tackles, bringing in McCary and Falele in for a handful of series. Reasoning behind that is to get them fresh moving forward in the fourth quarter. I'm curious to see if we continue that same trend because it did seem to work out in their favor against LA. I think going against these bookends and looking into the future with Joey Bosa and Chase Young coming up on the schedule, to me, it's going to be interesting to see how often they rotate them in and out in the beginning of the game, because I think you kind of evidently saw them not in the rotation in the second and third quarter, and then it came up in the fourth. So it's just seeing how they handle Josh Allen and Trayvon Walker with their chipset blocks and bringing in a tight end. Just curious to see how they do that.
All right. Well, fair enough. I think that is a big deal. The Ravens need to get after what is a very weak Jacksonville secondary. And in order to do that, they're going to have to figure out how to deal with the pass rush. The tackle rotation, I'd actually be surprised if they didn't do it. I think it will continue at least another week because it was successful. Falele had 1/2 a quarterback hit allowed in 8 snaps. But I think the key thing is he was on for 2 short series. They didn't try and expand his role to a second series to get Moses more time off. And they had non-overlapping series for those 2 players. So what do I mean? In the first half, McCary played one series in each half, totaling 14 snaps. And they were not the same series where Fa'alele was replacing Moses on the other side. So part of that has to do with what help in terms of protection they need to give those backup tackles. Mm-hmm. And trying to keep those guys healthy, I think, was a good part of it. I think there is another thing going on here, is that they needed to test the waters to see if Stanley could be more effective playing a reduced snap load. And they didn't really want them to do that. They didn't really want to do that to him only. So I think they said, okay, they probably called them both in Harbaugh's office at the same time and said, hey, look, we're going to try something different this week. We're going to have each of you replaced for a series in the half. We'll make it non-overlapping series, but you've both been through physical problems this year, blah, 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 blah. Well, we all know Stanley's been the one that's been through a lot more in terms of physical problems since he got injured in 2020. And it's really a case of getting him fit and keeping him fit for the playoffs, I think, more than is Moses. Moses played very well in this game, playing all but 8 snaps. So not really an issue from my perspective on that. I think that they did it on both sides because they wanted it to not feel as bad for Stanley.
And I think the true beneficiary of this, obviously, Stanley is the main key component, but Falele, I think whenever he does not F level play is when he's anticipating any kind of start. So to keep him in that mindset of you have potential to play, and he actually goes through a full week of rigorous practice and rigorous preparation, I think it could bode well moving forward in our tackle search.
Well, I hope that's true, because we need to see something out of Fa'alele really the rest of this year, or he'll enter year 3 with nothing in the books, which is kind of where he's really behind where Ben Cleveland was. He's never played a good game in his NFL career. All his games have been basically scored an F, where he's had at least 20 snaps as I've scored them. So he's had an unbelievable number of sacks allowed in a very relatively few number of total snaps. I had this out on a tweet between 22 and 23, just how bad it had been. But he led the Ravens in sacks allowed as I divide them up, and I give fractional sacks. Wow. In last year, and it was like 100 pass snaps or something he played. I mean, it was just nothing. And so it's not a good situation here. And I was originally of the opinion that Faalele might have been a guy who could play left tackle at some point, but the problem is not anything about his physical attributes or even his feet. The problem is all in his lack of willingness to punch and basically use his physical assets to any kind of degree against that opposing pass rusher. And if you're not willing to knock the other guy off his plan, then he basically gets to execute it against you, which is not a good thing. So I'm hoping he'll show us more.
And my theory on that is usually when you have an all-star, doesn't matter what position, could be quarterback, left tackle, receiver. Usually the person that is in front of them, in this case Faalele, he's kind of mimicking Stanley, and Stanley's not usually a punch and extend kind of guy. He's a catch and anchor kind of guy.
Yep.
So I guess having a quote unquote mentor like Stanley is not benefiting Faalele in that sense. So
where do you put the blame them on Joe D or anybody else who's an assistant offensive line coach or anybody else, an offensive coordinator, whatever, for allowing Faalele to continue to play with such a non-physical style?
Yeah, I think Joe D's a very legendary coach. I think that's maybe something he's identified. But to your point, it might just be Faalele isn't saying he's not willing to do it is a very harsh thing to say, but it hasn't shown on the field. So I guess that would be the next thing you can say, because it doesn't seem like he's taken the progression to where we think Joe D as a coach is able to take him. Mm-hmm. I think it's just a will thing at this point.
I mean, honestly, if that's the case, he really needs to invest in himself this off season and go to an offensive line camp where they're going to teach him some of those tricks to be more physical. It'll be coming from somebody different. I don't know any reason why Joe D would not be a good person to learn from, given all the success he's had.
Yep.
But it'd just be coming from somebody different to learn about that. And maybe the notion Stanley is a give ground to mirror left tackle, as I call it, which very much catch and anchor is a way to think of that. He's perfectly happy to give ground. In fact, this last game, I scored him for 4 pressures in the game. PFF had him for 1, by the way, but he was basically allowing the cone to be impeded a lot. Yep. I still want to see better from him. I still think there's another level. And this was probably his second best game of the year, honestly. It's a C game. It's probably the second best game he's played all year. I do want to see I do want to see more from him. And I also think that the getting McCary additional snaps, if you might have to move to McCary at some point for reasons of injury or reasons of ineffectiveness, whatever it is not an unreasonable thing to continue with. And McCary was okay. He wasn't, he didn't stand out all over the place. He was just okay, but you might have to move to him if Stanley can't improve his level of play.
Aaron Rodgers' season is officially over, but yours has just begun at MyBookie. NFL, college ball, and a brand new cash-out system gives you options to bet and win all season long. First 2 legs of your parlay hit, cash out early and place another bet, or let it ride for a chance at an even bigger payday. Join us at MyBookie for an entire season filled with daily odd boost, same-game parlays, and huge prize pool contests. Right now, MyBookie has a no-strings-attached cash bonus that lets you deposit and withdraw quick. Use the promo code RAVENS on your first deposit of $50 or more, and you can receive up to $200 in cash instantly credited to your MyBookie account. That's promo code RAVENS to claim your cash bonus now. You can bet anything, anytime, anywhere, only with MyBookie. If you found a $100 bill on the ground, you wouldn't walk past it, so don't pass up on a chance at easy cash with MyBookie. MyBookie has the biggest online selection of odds and contests to fill all your sports betting needs anytime, anywhere. So you can turn that sports knowledge into cash in your wallet. Bet the NFL, college bowl games, or play for a share of big cash prizes in weekly blackjack tournaments. And if you've been waiting for the right time to get in on the action, that time is now. Make your winning move today. Sign up at MyBookie and use the promo code RAVENS to claim your deposit match, redeemable up to $1,000. Again, that's promo code RAVENS to claim your bonus. Experience the thrill of sports betting right from the comfort of your home. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere with MyBookie.
I did want to say I don't think the Ravens can abandon the run in this game, but I do expect more of their offense to come from Lamar running the ball out of passing formations. And so they had a lot of that, obviously, in this last game where Lamar was his wily, elusive self, getting away from the Rams pass rush. I think we'll see more of that against the Jags, and I think Lamar will be taking off for some runs. And it'd be interesting to see how they hold him down with spies and how Lamar is able to manipulate spies, because the longer the routes are run, I think the more effective the Ravens will be at making extended plays and whatnot. So anyway, we had a great game. We had a great game where we saw extended routes run because of the wetness of the field and the lack of get off of those pass rushers, basically allowing full routes to be run. When you get to the top of the stem and there's a nice break allowed by that receiver, big advantage in terms of gaining separation there. And Lamar really got the benefit from that this last week. And hopefully more of that will come this week with some max protect that the Ravens are capable of throwing on, whether that means Hill or Ricard or the tight ends adding chip or set blocks to that edge protection.
And something that really had me excited this week or last week against LA was some of those spread out concepts that we talked about where it's just pretty much running people off to make space for the running back to extend the running play. Those things can really help Lamar in the sense of bringing up the defensive backs, making them play short. And last week was very encouraging to see Lamar push the ball. I think last week was probably the most he's pushed the ball downfield all year. And if it wasn't for that Bateman or the underthrow to Bateman, he would have had a hell of a game because that was the only pick he had.
Probably should have been a complete also. The other one I didn't like was the one to Beckham where he
almost
drifted the ball. Yeah, he drifted the ball back towards the middle of the field when it should have gone to the outside of the field where Beckham had a lot more room.
Yep. So it was overall, it was nice to see him push the ball downfield. I think some of the things that I was expecting from Monken, scheming up people wide open, like that Isaiah Likely touchdown, there wasn't anyone in the screen when he caught the ball. So continuing to see that kind of success in the scheme and then marrying that with pass protection and bringing in your chip block sets and things of that nature, I think we can continue to see these performances from the offense.
Hopefully another big game from Lamar here. And obviously the Jacksonville secondary is really their defensive weakness. They play the run pretty well. So it'd be nice to see them get exposed in this game. Let's flip it over to the defensive side. What do you want to see?
On the defense, I want us specifically on the defensive right, offensive left, to see how we attack their side. They have lost their left tackle, and they have a replacement left tackle in. From center to right tackle, they have all their starters in. So I think for us to unleash Madubuike and Owe on that side is going to be crucial, not only for us to win the game, but for their development moving forward. We obviously know Madubuike is on his way to a contract year. He's performing out of his mind. But still waiting for that true breakout game from Owe, and I think he really has the opportunity this year.
Blake Hance, the left tackle, played 52 snaps last week and got a 0.0 pass blocking grade from PFF. So that's a nice red flag there for the Ravens to start get some first pressures on that side. 4 hits and 4 hurries he allowed. So Lawrence is a guy you really want to protect from getting hit at this point in the season. Yep. But he definitely allowed him to be knocked all over the place. And then their left guard is Tyler Shatley. Interesting name there, but also had problems. How much has he played this year? Well, he really hadn't played very much since week 8. He'd been riding the pine. He was terrible early in the season. Not a good pass blocker, not a good run blocker. Just very, very little to like about him. He's been around the league for a long time, all with Jacksonville. This is his 10th year with Jacksonville. And he's never been all that good, but he's always been a backup lineman, so they haven't really had to have him play too much. But anyway, he's very vulnerable at left guard as well, so it should be a pair of guys they should go after. I think you had mentioned that Matabike and Owe would be 2 to really take advantage of him, particularly if you can line up Matabike as a 3-tech 1-on-1 versus Shatley, right?
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. And then have Owe 1-on-1 on the outside with the tackle.
Yep. Yeah, that would be if you can slant it that way. Of course, they can put a tight end on that side. They can down block. They can do lots of things to make that more difficult. But anyway, we hope for the best. We try and scheme it up for singles for our best pass blockers. They of course our pass rushers. They of course try and avoid that, and we'll see how that dance plays out. Did you have something more to say? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I did have one thing about making sure that we take advantage of the poor run blocking overall that Jaguars have. ETN is a special running back. He makes a majority of the runs out of his own spacing. I think the Ravens have to be dialed in on tackling this game. I think we did a pretty good job last game. Kyron Williams did have a couple explosive runs, especially in that first drive, and then one more after the second half. But Travis Etienne is such a difference maker that he potentially can be the Jaguars' whole offense if we can get pressure on Lawrence. So we have to make sure that we can tackle Etienne and take advantage of this weak rushing blocking.
One of the nice things about taking the run game out of the opponent's strategy is to just score some points. If you score some points on offense, then you probably won't have that point. And Etienne is a great player. What I'd say is I'd really like the Ravens not to get away from what has been their winning strategy overall by getting away from starting with cover 2 and rotating out of that into whatever they want to do in a play. Disguising coverage has been very effective that way, and it will keep Trevor Lawrence from throwing the ball deep a lot on the Ravens. I think he'll throw a lot of short passes. I think there's already a predilection from that with the weakness they have on the offensive line, with Lawrence's injury. They probably want the ball out of his hands as quickly as possible this game as opposed to others. He's usually pretty quick, by the way. He's a really quick trigger anyway. Mm-hmm. But if you really want to figure out how you take Travis Etienne out of the game, well, just score some points and that'll do it. Obviously that's what they're trying to do anyway, but right. It's a great solution. I think if you force Lawrence to play small ball, period, it's generally going to be a good thing. You have the Ravens' cornerback responsibilities be reduced in terms of what they do, as they have been all season. And then I test him with blitzes for his mobility. Lawrence is a guy in the past whose mobility has played a significant role in the Jaguars being effective against the Ravens. But I'm hoping in this game, this is one where with the problems he's got with his legs, that he's not going to really want to be off and running. You test him with a blitz, he throws the ball away for an incomplete pass. So that's what I'm hoping to see in this game.
Yeah, and then getting home with 4 would be the cherry on top, in my opinion, as it always is. But one way that they could attack is if they overload the left side of the offensive line, having Pierce head up on the center, and then having 3-tech with Matabike head up, and then having Owe on the outside. I think that's another way to really attack, because center can't help on Matabike, and there's no help for the tackle. So it's pretty much everyone's on an island except for the chip if it's there. So if we can get home with 4 in those kind of scenarios without sending pressure, maybe simulating having Roquan and PQ at the line and then backing out into coverage, I think those scenarios might work best in this case because of the incompetency of the left side.
This will be a lot of fun to watch. The Jaguars we're catching them at probably a pretty good time right now for the Ravens. And hopefully this is a case where the Ravens go into what would have been a very tough road game, one of the toughest games of the year, and they're going in as a 3.5 point favorite versus one of the teams they very well may have to play again in the playoffs. If everything goes as expected in the first round, well, I don't know. I don't know what I mean by that comment.
Right.
Buffalo may be favored to go into Jacksonville and kick their asses too, which is something I really would not want to see.
Yeah.
But it'd be great to be facing Jacksonville again in January in Baltimore.
Yeah, definitely don't want to see Buffalo. I think they're definitely the hottest team in football if they keep going, because they just came off the win against KC, and that's got to be a confidence booster for Josh Allen.
Yeah. Hopefully, we have to think of the Ravens in this light at some point. They've won what, 6 out of 7 now.
Yeah.
This is a team that appears to be peaking at the correct time. They're going to need to, finish taking care of business over the course, hopefully, of the next 3 weeks. Because all 3 weeks, if they win the next 3 games, they don't even have to worry about number 4. They've got the number 1 seed locked up.
Yep.
So it'd be really nice if they can do that. I'm all for getting 2 weeks of rest for this team, which has, obviously some nagging things going on the offensive line. Even if you don't do it for everybody, just do it for Stanley. Lamar, 1 series, 1.5 series
out of there. Yeah.
Moses out of there. You got guys on the defense who are working through injuries. Maybe Humphrey.
Take Pierce out of there. A lot of things.
That'd be a good bet. Taking Pierce out of there. Maybe play Matabike 30 snaps instead of 50 in that final game.
Take over the whole game. Yeah, I think I'm hoping that Steelers game doesn't mean anything for your point exactly. It's just hoping that rust doesn't catch up during that playoff game. That's the only thing.
That rust does not catch up. Another thing that I don't think a lot of people are talking about right now, the Ravens may have an enormous vested interest in losing that game and ditching it intentionally to the Steelers if it keeps Buffalo out. I mean, literally, it could be a case of Pittsburgh is in and Buffalo's out. Well, the Steelers just became our best friends at that point.
Yeah, I would definitely rather face the Steelers as the bottom seed in the second round for sure.
And even if it means giving Kansas City a relatively early game, let's see Kansas City goes on and wins the number 2 seed, which I think is still reasonably likely. Could be Miami, but let's say Kansas City goes on and wins the number 2 seed. It would really be nice to see Kansas City play Pittsburgh in the first round. Probably even more so. I mean, it'd be nice to have Kansas City out, but I think Buffalo's a better team than Kansas City. I don't want them in the playoffs if it could be avoided.
Very true. I think them and Houston. If Houston gets healthy and Stroud comes back as he normally is, I think those are the 2 teams that are wild cards that could be very dangerous.
All right. Well, always a pleasure doing this show with you, Frazier. Tell folks where they can talk football with you online.
You guys can find me at Twitter/X at F_RAVE8. That's F_Rave8.
All right. Outstanding. Other folks out there, if you'd like to be on a film study short, hit me up with a DM on Twitter. They're always open. I'll get back to you very quickly. Whatever you're passionate about is what I'd like to have a talk with you about. And I promise I'll get back to you quickly. We'll boil down your idea into a nice kernel that can be talked about in 15 to 20 minutes and provide some additional shorter content that'll introduce people, hopefully, to film study and the idea that it's not a big barrier to be on a film study short either. So looking for people who just are good fans. You don't have to be, a mathematical wizard. You don't have to be a PhD. We have had some of that on the show, obviously, but you don't have to be coming up with your own, new method for anything specifically. Just something you're passionate about. For Frazier DeFar, this is Ken McCusick saying goodbye, and we'll talk to you next week on Matchups.